What is up, everybody? We're on day 87 of our Bible in a Year series. We're in 1 Samuel still. Have a couple days left in 1 Samuel. Chapter 22. We're coming up on some pretty interesting stuff if you've not read it before. But it's going to be good. It is going to be good. That I can guarantee. It is going to be good. So let's jump straight in. We are reading out of the CSB. If you're interested, it'll be up on the screen, or you can follow along if you have one, or there's a link in the description for one, specifically the Apologetics Study Bible. So, with that being said, let's jump straight in. Chapter 22. So David left Gath, not Goth. I don't think David was Goth. David left Gath and took refuge in the cave of Adullam. When David's brothers and his father's whole family heard, they went down and joined him there. In addition, every man who was desperate, in debt, or discontented rallied around him, and he became their leader. About 400 men were with him. From there, David went to Mizpah of Moab, where he said to the king of Moab, "Please let my father and mother stay with you until I know what God will do for me." So he left them in the care of the king of Moab, and they stayed with him the whole time David was in the stronghold. Then the prophet Gad said to David, "Don't stay in the stronghold, leave and return to the land of Judah." So David left and went to the forest of Hereth. Saul heard that David and his men had been discovered. At that time, Saul was in Gibeah, sitting under the tamarisk tree at the high place. His spear was in hand, and all his servants were standing around him. I'm sure they were nervous if they had seen how Saul is with spears. Verse 7, Saul said to his servants, "Listen, men of Benjamin, is Jesse's son going to give all of you fields and vineyards? Do you think he'll make all of you commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? That's why all of you have conspired against me. Nobody tells me when my own son makes a covenant with Jesse's son. None of you cares about me or tells me that my son has stirred up my own servant to wait in ambush for me, as is the case today." So he is full on paranoid. Then Doeg, the Edomite, who was in charge of Saul's servants, answered, "I saw Jesse's son come to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub at Nob. Ahimelech inquired of the Lord for him and gave him provisions. He also gave him the sword of Goliath, the Philistine." So this is the dude that was there when David showed up and got Goliath's sword. I think that was in yesterday's reading. It's not going to go well. Verse 11. The king sent messengers to summon the priest Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, and his father's whole family, who were priests in Nob. All of them came to the king. Then Saul said, "Listen, son of Ahitub, I'm at your service, my lord," he said. Saul asked him, "Why did you and Jesse's son conspire against me? You gave him bread and a sword and inquired of God for him, so he could rise up against me and wait in ambush, as is the case today." Ahimelech replied to the king, "Who among all your servants is as faithful as David? He is the king's son-in-law, captain of your bodyguard, and honored in your house. Was today the first time I inquired of God for him? Of course not. Please don't let the king make an accusation against your servant or any of my father's family, for your servant didn't have any idea about all this." But the king said, "You will die, Ahimelech, you and your father's whole family." Then the king ordered the guards standing by him, "Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because they sided with David. For they knew he was fleeing, but they didn't tell me." But the king's servants would not lift a hand to execute the priests of the Lord. So the king said to Doeg, "Go and execute the priest." So Doeg the Edomite went and executed the priest himself. On that day, he killed 85 men who wore linen ephods. He also struck down Nob, the city of the priests, with the sword. both men and women, infants and nursing babies, oxen, donkeys, and sheep. However, one of the sons of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, escaped. His name was Abiathar, and he fled to David. Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord. Then David said to Abiathar, I knew that Doeg the Edomite was there that day, and that he was sure to report to Saul. I myself am responsible for the lives of everyone in your father's family. Stay with me. Don't be afraid, for the one who wants to take my life wants to take your life. You will be safe with me. So, things are heating up, I think is one way you could say this, right? Chapter 23. It was reported to David, look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and raiding the threshing floors. So David inquired of the Lord, should I launch an attack against these Philistines? The Lord answered David, launch an attack against the Philistines and rescue Keilah. But David's men said to him, look, we're afraid here in Judah. How much more if we go to Keilah against the Philistine forces? Once again, David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered him, go at once to Keilah, for I will hand the Philistines over to you. Then David and his men went to Keilah, fought against the Philistines, drove their livestock away, and inflicted heavy losses on them. So David rescued the inhabitants of Keilah. Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, fled to David at Keilah, and he brought an ephod with him. When it was reported to Saul that David had gone to Keilah, he said, God has handed him over to me, for he has trapped himself by entering a town with barred gates. Then Saul summoned all the troops to go to war at Keilah and besiege David and his men. When David learned that Saul was plotting evil against him, he said to the priest Abiathar, bring the ephod. Then David said, Lord God of Israel, your servant has reliable information that Saul intends to come to Keilah and destroy the town because of me. Will the citizens of Keilah hand me over to him? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? Lord God of Israel, please tell your servant. The Lord answered, he will come down. Then David asked, will the citizen of Keilah hand me and my men over to Saul? They will, the Lord responded. So David and his men, numbering about 600, left Keilah at once and moved from place to place. When it was reported to Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, he called off the expedition. David then stayed in the wilderness strongholds and in the hill country of the wilderness of Ziph. Saul searched for him every day, but God did not hand David over to him. And you'll notice this ends up kind of being David's thing, like kind of being the underdog, being on the run. Not maybe necessarily underdog, but being on the run. I think what we would typically consider like a guerrilla warfare type thing. We see that like David comes back to that even after he's king. He comes back to that. Verse 15. David was in the wilderness of Ziph in Horesh when he saw that Saul had come out to take his life. Then Saul's son Jonathan came to David in Horesh and encouraged him in his faith in God, saying, don't be afraid, for my father Saul will never lay a hand on you. You yourself will be king over Israel, and I'll be your second in command. Even my father Saul knows it's true. Then the two of them made a covenant in the Lord's presence. Afterward, David remained in Horesh while Jonathan went home. Some Ziphites came up to Saul at Gibeah and said, isn't it true that David is hiding among us in strongholds in Horesh, in the hill of Hakilah, south of Jeshimon? Where the king wants to come down, let him come down. As for us, we will be glad to hand him over to the king. May you be blessed by the Lord, replied Saul, for you have shown concern for me. Go and check again, investigate where he goes, and who has seen him there. Then tell me he is extremely cunning. Investigate all the places where he hides, then come back to me with accurate information. And I'll go with you if he turns out he really is in the region. I'll search for him among all the clans of Judah. So they went to Ziph ahead of Saul. Now David and his men were in the wilderness near Maon in the Arabah, south of Jeshimon. Sounds like Jesse Pokemon. Jeshimon. And Saul, and this is the stuff you get. This is why the ones that are continuing to come back and listen, this is why you're here, because every once in a while I say something kind of remotely funny. Verse 25, and Saul and his men went to look for him. When David was told about it, he went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. Saul heard of this and pursued David there. All along the mountain, and David and his men went along the other side. Even though David was hurrying to get away from Saul, Saul and his men were closing in on David and his men to capture them. Then a messenger came to Saul, saying, quickly, because the Philistines have raided the land. So Saul broke off his pursuit of David and went to engage the Philistines. Therefore, that place was named the Rock of Separation. From there, David went up and stayed in the strongholds of En-gedi. Okay, chapter 24. When Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, David is in the wilderness near En-gedi. So Saul took 3,000 of Israel's fit young men and went to look for David and his men in front of the rocks of the wild goats. When Saul came to the sheep pens along the road, a cave was there, and he went in to relieve himself. Now, this is the verse I was talking, I think it was yesterday. This is bringing up the, I talked about it in high phrase, a verse that's taken out of context a lot. Okay? David and his men were staying in the recesses of the cave. So they said to him, look, this is the day the Lord told you about. I will hand your enemy over to you, so you can do to him whatever you desire. Then David got up and secretly cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Afterward, David's conscience bothered him because he had cut off the corner of Saul's robe. So, to give you an idea of where David's head's at, Saul has tried to pin him to the wall with a spear on at least 2 occasions. I think we can agree that one is probably too many, but at least 2 occasions this has happened. He's also been actively trying to kill him. David cuts off a corner of his robe. Yeah, his robe. And he feels guilt. Okay, verse 6. He said to his men, as the Lord is my witness, I would never do such a thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed. I will never lift my hand against him, since he is the Lord's anointed. So this is the verse I was talking about. This is in other translations. I think King James is touch not the Lord's anointed, or something along those lines. And people will use this to say that you should not speak out against leaders. I have seen, for anyone that is familiar with Mike Winger, the stuff that he's been doing recently, I have seen people comment on his content saying that specifically, touch not the Lord's anointed. So I would say, if you look at this in context, unless you are talking about killing those leaders, then this is not applicable. People take that verse out of context to have structures in which a charismatic leader, I don't mean charismatic as in like gifts of the spirit charismatic, but like a popular speaker charismatic, or a good speaker. But they come up with rules like this to keep a charismatic speaker from being held accountable, because that's bringing in money and stuff to their church. You don't have to like that I said it. It's true, though. So if you hear that said, if someone tells you that when you're talking about calling out someone in leadership or a pastor, ask them what the rest of the context of that verse is. They probably don't know. Verse 7. With these words, David persuaded his men, and he did not let them rise up against Saul. Then Saul left the cave and went on his way. After that, David got up, went out of the cave, and called to Saul, "My lord the king." When Saul looked behind him, David knelt low with his face to the ground and paid homage. David said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the words of people who say, 'Look, David intends to harm you'? You can see with your own eyes that the Lord handed you over to me today in the cave. Someone advised me to kill you, but I took pity on you and said, 'I won't lift my hand against my Lord, since he is the Lord's anointed.' Look, my father, look at the corner of your robe in my hand, for I cut it off, but I didn't kill you. Recognize that I've committed no crime or rebellion. I haven't sinned against you, even though you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between me and you, and may the Lord take vengeance on you for me, but my hand will never be against you. As the old proverb says, wickedness comes from wicked people. My hand will never be against you. Who has the king of Israel come after? What are you chasing after? A dead dog, a single flea? May the Lord be judge and decide between you and me. May he take notice and plead my case and deliver me from you." When David finished saying these things to him, Saul replied, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" Then Saul wept aloud and said to David, "You are more righteous than I, for you have done what is good to me, though I have done what is evil to you. You yourself have told me today what good you did for me. When the Lord handed me over to you, you didn't kill me. When a man finds his enemy, does he let him go unharmed? May the Lord repay you with good for what you have done to me today. Now I know for certain you will be king, and the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hand. Therefore swear to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants or wipe out my name from my father's family." So David swore to Saul. Then Saul went back home, and David and his men went up to the stronghold. Okay. Yeah. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Just imagining Saul. I'm not gonna say it. Never mind. So maybe I don't know. Maybe one of these days we'll get a Patreon going or something like that, and I'll have these random thoughts, and I'll be able to put it there. It's nothing educational. It's very juvenile, but yeah. Okay. We'll get to our questions. Question 1. Saul's order to kill the priest in chapter 22 stemmed from his rejection of God's authority. How does this act deepen our understanding of sin as not just personal failure, but a cosmic rebellion against divine order? I've talked about this several times throughout the series, especially when we were in like Leviticus and really Leviticus a lot. But we have a major problem with not recognizing sin for what it is and not seeing sin for as bad as it is. Like, to us, it's like, oh, it's just a small thing. But we don't realize how much sin actually separates us from God. We don't, and a lot of that is because I don't think we can even comprehend really fully how holy God actually is. I don't think it's possible, at least for us now, I don't think it's possible for us to actually comprehend God's holiness and how much we fall short of that. Even the smallest sin in our mind, how much that removes us from God. I think if we were actually able to comprehend that, and people who actively think about that, they still don't completely comprehend it, I don't think. But if we were able to comprehend that, I think there would be no question. And this is why I think it ties into maybe a little bit of a tangent. But I've heard the question before, people say, like, well, what about when you get to heaven? Does that mean like you don't have free will anymore because like you're in heaven, so you've already made your decision, so you're not going to be able to sin. You're not going to be able to choose to step away from God or what have you. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think technically we'll still have free will, but I think we'll also have a more perfect understanding of what holy actually is, and we'll have a more perfect understanding of how holy God is, and a more perfect understanding of how evil, wicked, and just disastrous for you sin is. I think we'll be able to see sin for what it actually is. Again, a little bit of a tangent there, but I think that definitely it shows a lack of understanding of holiness and sin, and kind of how they play with each other, or how they're related to each other. Question 2. David's refusal to harm Saul, the Lord's anointed, in chapters 23 and 24, reflects a profound trust in God's timing. How does this challenge us theologically to surrender our desire for control to God's sovereign plan? This is something I struggle with a lot. Even now, I struggle with quite a bit. And I try to remind myself of this point that's being made in the question. It's not that so trusting God's will is, there's a couple, or God's timing. There's a couple things that play with that. First, the clearest one is trusting that God is going to do what needs to happen. So he's going to share with you what you need to know, and do it in the timing that needs to happen, and orchestrate the other events and things that come together at the right time, and all that. There's that. There's also, and this is one that I really didn't think about until I had a friend at a previous church. We were in a men's group, and we were talking, and he mentioned this, and it's really stuck with me since. But the idea that, I used to worry that I was going to not actually hear God, right? That I would be praying and seeking God, and that I would be so focused on something else, or so focused on the question, that I would not hear what God wanted me to do. And he basically said, that's still a trust issue with God. You're not trusting God enough you're not trusting that God can get your attention and show you what to do. You have more faith in your ability to block him out than, which, I mean, for me, that really struck a nerve. And I think there's some truth in it. Now, you can tune out God. He's not going to force you to do something. But if you're honestly seeking God, he'll make it known to you. But that's something I still struggle with. Because I want to have a plan, I want to have everything in my control. I want to be able to plan out, control, manipulate the situation, and things like that. And many, 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 many times, that's not what God wants. He wants a yes from us, and then he is going to work everything out. Question 3. David's mercy towards Saul prefigures Christ's call to love enemies. How might this narrative invite us to reconsider the interplay between justice, forgiveness, and the transformative power of grace in God's redemptive story? So one thing that really stuck with me with this whole concept of forgiveness, anyone that's not familiar, John Bevere is a pastor I really like, I really respect. He has several really good teachings on different topics. He has one on offense called The Bait of Satan. Phenomenal book, phenomenal course to go through. I really can't recommend it enough. The idea basically is that if you hold on to offense from other people, you hold on to unforgiveness, that is giving, sorry, I yawned. That is giving the devil a foothold in your life. It's giving him a permission to have a foothold in your heart. And so this forgiveness is something that we need to be quick to do. We see Jesus talk about that, and we see that here with David and how he was with Saul. And it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing to be able to forgive somebody who does not ask for it. Someone who, in our opinion, doesn't deserve it. When, especially, it becomes a lot easier when you realize that we didn't deserve it either. And what we did was far worse. Who we offended actually had a right to be offended. And it was a much higher offense when God forgave us. So that is it for today. Appreciate everybody watching, listening up to this point. If you're still with us, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe so you never miss anything new that's coming out. And we do have, I got some new stuff that's getting ready to officially be released. So stuff I've been working on in the background, videos, other kind of announcement type things, and some other stuff like that. So a lot of stuff going on in the background that's going to be coming out in the near future. It's going to be very, very exciting, and you're going to want to make sure that you are subscribed and hit the notification bell so you always get notified whenever new stuff comes out. So yeah, word of mouth is the best way that podcast spreads. So if this has been a blessing to you, pass it along to other people. It may not seem like it, but word of mouth is the number one way that. So you share it with somebody else, they can be blessed by it, they can share it with somebody else, and then we can continue to help more people develop this habit of getting in and reading their word daily, giving them someone that they can read along with who sometimes is kind of funny and doesn't have the most annoying voice ever. That would be yours truly. But yeah, I appreciate that. We will be back tomorrow and the next day is what we have left of 1 Samuel, I believe. And then after that, we'll be in 2 Samuel, and we'll continue the fun there. And the stories are not winding down. If anything, they're winding back up. It's going to get more and more and more and more and more. And just awesome stuff to go through. So appreciate it. Thanks. God bless.